What is going on, everybody? We are coming at you live on the XCFL network. We have the biggest night of the year. I am your commissioner, Nick. I guess we'll set the stage here a little bit, but yeah, I guess welcome everybody to the official XCFL Men 26 award show. We've grinded through 8 seasons, witnessed some great upsets, Super Bowl runs, hard fought victories, and tonight's kind of like the cap it all off moment where we kind of look back at how everything went down. So I think this cycle of Madden 26 kind of tested us all. Whether it was gameplay, whether it was activity, content wise. But whatever you want to say about it, it produced some absolute awesome moments that kind of will go down in XFL history, much like all the cycles do. I think this tonight we kind of close the chapter on 26, kind of get the shift focused on 27. But before we do that, we want to rightfully cement the legacies of those players who kind of showed out in Men 26. So we'll look at the people, top 25 players of the cycle who kind of dominated on the virtual gridiron. Guys that'll have their names go down in XCFL history, and then obviously, we'll cap the show off with potentially 1, 2, 3, 0 XCFL users who will see themselves cemented in the XCFL Hall of Fame. So tonight's all about the XCFL, kind of showing that we are, a solid community, one of the best communities out there. We have been for almost a decade now, almost a decade. So that's actually incredible. So let's all settle in. Hopefully your UFC is delayed, so you got a little bit of time to kind of listen to us a little bit, kind of blabble about some of these players. But feel free, post your opinions in chat, throw comments in there, I'll read them out, and let's give Men 26 the send off that it kind of deserves. Let's get this thing rocking. I got Quacks with me, I got Van with me, and we got Rob jumping in as well. Van, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Very, very good. Looking forward to this. It's one of the best shows of the year for sure.
Yeah, it's an exciting one. Rob, how about yourself, dude?
I'm just excited to get this finalized and get ready to start the next one in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's coming. And then Quacks, I know you're making dinner over there because it's only 5:44 your time. So what do you got? What do you got going on?
Doing good, man. It's exciting. This is I think everybody works towards having a couple guys' names called tonight. So feels like we are fully rolling with the beta. We're
Yep.
in Man 27 days now. So I think the anticipation is only going to build up more and more.
Yeah, we had Van's award show kind of kick us off last night. And now we kind of get right into this, which I didn't even remember it was today. So I'm happy you were on top of things with all the So first off, shout out to Quacks on most of the graphics you see tonight. He, him, Claude, Gemini, whoever it was, are all cooking things up in the background. So awesome to have that. I think it'll just get better and better as you kind of go. VBD called himself the Barry Bonds of the XCFL Hall of Fame. Oh God. All right. Well, shout out to everybody in chat. Like I said, I know it's Sunday night, summertime, tough time to join. Sunday night, all you want to do is sit back and relax. UFC's on the White House card. So let's kind of get into it. We'll make sure we get this uploaded on YouTube so everybody can go back and it'll kind of be there for the foreseeable future. But with that being said, we're going to start tonight with the XCFL Madden Gen Hall of Fame. We'll start with these guys. I think in Quacks, you were part of the voting process for a lot of this stuff. I think we try to be a little more selective. It's like a delicate balance of like making sure we honor enough names where it's like cool and a lot of people get to hear their players heard, but also making it like still an honor to be one of the, however many are going in each year. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, I think it's all relative, right? I mean, there's probably guys that are not going to get in to this cycle that would be top of their class in other Maddens, right?
Yep.
So I think we saw a lot of offensive numbers. Um, Things ballooned a little bit. Probably scoring averages above like 35 points a game for the
Yeah.
cycle didn't help, but it's all relative. So there's still guys that stood out. I think a lot of votes were really easy, but then some were on the cusp. But keeping it slim is the only way that it even matters. So I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let me get over that. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Like I said, that's kind of why we did the Ring of Honor too, so you can remember your own players if they might not have made the cut to make the Hall of Fame class. You can still remember them on that spreadsheet, and we can make sure we have, you know, remembrance of them as we go through, because it's tough. You want to make I mean, theoretically, if we would have gone back to the start of XCFL, I would have loved to just do like 5 players a class, and it like is the best of the best, where you think back to Madden 18 or Madden's, whatever, 21, and you're like, oh, that was the one with so and so, that was so and so. But we like to, give everybody a little shout out. So hopefully a couple guys hear some names called and get excited. And, if you don't, the grind for next Madden, it starts. So get those Madden Gen guys in early and let's see what happens. So, all right, let's get into it. We'll open up with our Hall of Fame here. Let me see if I got it on the right screen. I think we got a little award show music we can get going here too. Let me know how loud that is. Actually, let me hear it. Let me know how loud that is. Actually, let me hear it. Let me know how loud that is. Actually, let me hear it. Let me know how loud that is. Actually, is that a little better? Hopefully, I think we're good. If not, we'll turn it off. But I wanted a little background noise while we kind of go through this. But Quacks through this together. I think it's gonna be pretty cool. I think the biggest thing I wish we could get from everybody, Quacks, would be screenshots of their players. That would make things so cool. If everybody who had a top guy had a screenshot saved, and it would make the AI images you can create so much easier and cooler. Kind of what you do with that one graphic. But that's not always the case. Some people are more active into that stuff than others. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first member of the XCFL Madden 26 Hall of Fame is going to be Giants wide receiver / gadget player Marquise Worthy. We're going to start out with a bang, get him out of the way. We don't have to say much about it. We'll kind of go over stats for everybody. 7 seasons played, 637 catches, 11,800 yards, 185 receiving touchdowns, 63 rushing touchdowns, 10 kick return touchdowns, and 4 passing touchdowns for a grand total of 258 touchdowns on the cycle. Obviously, my guy, an absolute massive cycle for Marquise Worthy. Let's throw it over to Van to say some nice things.
Yeah, well, this guy, where do you start? He's a pain in everybody's ass, impossible to stop. He cheeses at halfback. He cheeses at quarterback. He's absolutely freaking everywhere. And even when you focused on him, you couldn't stop him. I think that was the hardest part for everybody. Like a lot of people knew what was coming and who it was going to. Still didn't matter. So when you put those kind of stats up and that, you get that, how you stayed underneath the 70-30 every year, or the rule for that is the 70-30. I know you had to bench him a few times. So yeah, this guy, I think out of all the receivers you've ever had, and I think you'd agree that this guy takes the cake.
Yeah, it was a hell of a cycle for Worthy. He's definitely one of my favorites.
Rumor has it.
Go ahead.
Rumor has it that Nick was the one that got Claude banned because he was getting Marquise Worthy's 70-30 situations under order.
We made sure it was all good. I did not want to lose him for any playoff games. We made sure. So he had 0 violations, which is awesome. We did have to create some rules with the gadget players and different things, but.
And honestly, shout out to Chad for following the tradition of giving you an unstoppable receiver the first draft every year.
To be honest, I got lucky with him, man. It was the Bengals guy leaving, heading into the offseason, and then the computer had the first overall pick and took the defensive end, which let Worthy fall to 2, and that kind of jump started my whole cycle. So it would have been a very interesting story if I didn't get him. So it made the cycle fun for me. Like that was kind of my thing, rather I don't care about the championships as much as just developing players and, putting up some cool stats. So Marquise Worthy, first name of the night, we're going to see elected to the Hall of Fame. Let's jump to our next guy. We don't need to spend too much time on Worthy. I know everyone's sick of him. So number 2 going in. Quacks, I think we have 14 guys going in?
Is it that many?
I thought it was 14.
Might be less.
All right, well, the next guy up is Ronnie Jacobs, the one-time Jacksonville Jaguar. He kind of was splitting carries in Jacksonville. jumped in a trade to Drew and the Eagles, and that is where the career trajectory just kind of went bananas. 7 seasons, 11,600 yards, 147 touchdowns, 244 receptions, 3,020 receiving yards, and 41 more touchdowns. Throughout those 7 seasons, out of all running backs, he averaged, I think, the most yards. Well, I mean, out of all the ones we considered, averaged 1,600 yards a season, 21 touchdowns, a total average per year of over 2,000 yards if you include the receiving stats, and almost 27 touchdowns. So Ronnie Jacobs, I mean, in the division, I'll start. In the division, absolute problem, obviously. You'd load the box and stop him, and then Drew had some receivers he could throw to, so then you'd back off, and then Jacobs would just eat you alive. So when he got to Philly, we all told Riot, what a stupid trade for you to do this. And he said, oh, he's not that good. And then he just went absolute bananas. He had a season of like 40 touchdowns or something. An absolute hell of a cycle from Ronnie Jacobs and Drew over there. Rob, what's your take on Ronnie Jacobs?
Well, I got to play against him one time when he was with Drew, and and he got dropped from the Wheel of Chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I think that wheel, I think all it did was made him stronger, because he was like an insane bowling ball. He didn't have to be very fast to be very effective, but I think he's the one guy that was really not factored at all by that wheel.
Yeah, he dropped he lost speed and acceleration, and it didn't really matter. He was
no.
What was his final speed? What was his speed at the end of the cycle?
92, 90. I think it was 95, dropped to 92. But then you probably had the +1, so he probably was more 96 playing at 93, I guess. But
Okay.
definitely not the fastest running back out of all of them, but it felt like he was pretty fast. Quacks, what do you got on Ronnie Jacobs? Nope, we might be cooking dinner. If you want me to hold off on going to you, I can.
Sorry, give me just a sec. I check the chat.
Oh, gotcha. Cool. All good. Let me move that over here while I'm at it. But yeah, I mean, Ronnie Jacobs, though. Yeah. Oh, got it. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. We need 2 graphics. All right, cool. But yeah, Ronnie Jacobs, I mean, a cycle changer for Drew, won a Super Bowl in Philly. Like I said, massive stats. We'll go ahead and jump to our third guy. We're going to try to get this award show done, and we don't want it to go 2 hours. So let's try to get it kind of going quick. But number 3 coming up here. Oh, Calvin Andrews, New York Giants quarterback. Same draft class as Marquise Worthy, 7 seasons, 31,000 yards passing, 355 touchdowns, only 75 interceptions, a career completion percentage of 75%, and a career QBR of 143.2. He also did it on the ground. I think he added another 32 rushing touchdowns. So that brings the total up over just about 400, just shy of 400 total touchdowns on the cycle. Like I said, it kind of came in with Worthy. It was a perfect storm how it kind of worked out that first draft. I got really lucky with these two. He had the quick release. He had just enough speed to make him usable there. And then, of course, I think the highlight of the cycle for me was his season where he had 49 touchdowns and 0 interceptions.
That's insane.
Which is, the first time we've seen that. There were some low interception totals out there this year, but nobody accomplished 0, which Calvin Andrews that was a stressful season down the stretch. Just making sure I didn't throw a pick towards the end. I just was like, I'm so close. I got to do it. But yeah, that was, first draft class. That was the same draft class that Marquise Davis, McCoy got drafted. There were a bunch of stud quarterbacks that all got picked there. Yeah, Yoshi, he did have the 0 touchdown, 0 interception season.
You have to admit that it's tough to throw a pick on a jet sweep.
Yeah, that's what everyone would always say, but jet sweeps, the RPOs, we had our system, man. And it was more than just that, but it was.
What was his draft story? How did you acquire him?
I ended up with the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th pick that year. And Quacks kind of saved me last minute. We ended up making a deal because he wasn't going to get a quarterback he wanted. So he ended up getting me the 5th pick, which allowed me to pass on Ricard at 3 and take a quarterback at 3 because I knew Brackett was going quarterback at 4. And so it all kind of fell together. Brackett was really pissed how it all worked out because I think Andrews was the better prospect than Marquise Davis, but Davis was still a stud too, and he came out X Factor and all that good stuff. But yeah, Andrews was a stud. He was a perfect combo of just enough speed, 96 throw power, like everything worked out well. So Calvin Andrews inducted to the XCFL Hall of Fame. Let's go ahead and jump to our next guy. I don't know what order Quacks put these in, so when you guys see him, I see him as well. But all right, next up, this is the guy Van is very familiar with. Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Damon Malone. 7 seasons. He ended up being the receiving yards king of the cycle. He had more than worthy, almost by 1,000. 12,500 receiving yards, 139 touchdowns. A monster cycle. He averaged 90 catches a season and 1,700 yards and just 19.9 touchdowns a year. Got robbed of all of his NFC Best Wide Receiver awards because Worthy took them all, but this guy was a problem. Man, it's one of those guys that when you play against him, like you notice the plays he would make or the jump balls he'd go catch or, whatever it was, just a real difference maker out there.
Well, there's a funny story about this guy is I didn't know right until the last season that he has. I didn't know right until the last season. Like, I was shocked. He was open every single time. The only times I ever beat JMO is when he didn't have him. I'll leave it at that. Like, he was just unstoppable.
JMO does this a lot, Rob, where everyone else has got the speed receivers going, and JMO just goes and takes the 88, 89, 90 speed receiver and puts together a big-time cycle. He did it with the white guy he had out in Indianapolis, the one cycle, Cam Baldwin, and now Damon Malone next up for JMO. So what do you got on Malone?
Well, I tried to get Malone in a couple of those fantasy drafts, and every time I would go to grab him, he'd be gone, and he was like one of my targets. So unless I would have taken him in the first round, but really good player. JMO did an excellent job with him.
Yeah, very consistent all cycle long. If you pull up his stat page and just look at each season, looks the exact same. So it's a big year. JMO knew how to use them, and the 89 speed did not hurt throughout the cycle for Damon Malone. So Malone's getting in, second wide receiver into the class, into the 26 class. Let's go ahead and jump to our next guy. And it's going to be quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, 3-time Super Bowl champion, Elijah Weston. If you thought Andrews had a successful cycle with the low interceptions, in one less season, Weston played 6 seasons, 28,000 yards, 375 passing touchdowns, only 58 picks. Completion percentage was at 73%, and then his QBR was 140.7. So Andrews got him in a couple categories, but Weston in that one fewer season, I think Chaos said in chat yesterday that he had 60 passing touchdowns every year except one. His numbers were off the charts. The system Chaos had over there with the speed receivers, the tight end, the stud running back who catches the ball in the backfield. It was kind of the perfect storm to bring Weston into, and he just went bonkers, especially to end the cycle, rallying off 3 straight Super Bowls to finish us off. And a big part of it was this guy. Van, what do you got on Elijah Weston?
I mean, the couple of times that I played him, he was just distributing the ball all over the place, especially to that tight end. But I mean, he's another guy on that roster that's just so developed. You know what I mean? Like, he had so many. And we talked last night about him having 5 or 6 studs. This guy was the leader of that group. You know, I think he was a big reason for his success. I don't know how far he would have gone, to be honest, without this guy. He ended up getting that ability, the one that shows the defense's play art. So if he got, I think it was like 3 completions of 1 yard in a row or something, he got to see your defensive play art, which really... What's that worth? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, looking back, we probably should have got rid of that one because it was tough. And you could see the AFC guys in the playoffs would be like, this is stupid. Like, he could see, cover 4, this, man, but you still got to go out and make the right throw, time everything up. So, I had the similar ability with Ricard. So, looking back, probably should have banned some of those. But hey, you live and you learn. Each Madden cycle is a different story, and Elijah Weston did it better than anybody. So, shout out. And I will say, other people had the option to pick that one because it was, if you got one of the illegal ones, you got to pick your your X Factor ability that fit in your guys' archetype, and Chaos was the only one that picked that one out of the 4 or 5 that had a chance. So um, definitely
He
worked
did
out for him.
the game. He was a student, man. He knew all the ins and outs. That's why his team looked like it did.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and Weston was like the perfect point guard for that offense. He wasn't asked to do too much, didn't have to make too many downfield throws. A lot of them were short passes, tight windows, and he did exactly what Titans needed to do on their way to their three-peat. So Elijah Weston, congrats, Chaos. I think so. Is that Chaos's first XFL Hall of Famer? I think. Let's jump to another. All right, Lamar Henley, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. He was one of our Nike prospects. He went number 2 overall in the draft right after Quacks took Reggie Burrows at 1. Only played 4 seasons, but his averages across those 4 seasons were 83 catches, 2,200 yards, and 27 touchdowns in 4 seasons. So he ended up finishing with 109 total touchdowns in 4 seasons, almost 9,000 yards, 330 catches. There was a debate on if he would get in. We had a couple other guys picked out, but what Henley did in those 4 seasons was absolutely incredible and deserved to be, when you think back to the cycle, you got it, Lamar Henley, one of our Nike prospects, Super Bowl champ. Brackett won the Super Bowl with him. Henley got it done. Quacks, probably, do you regret not taking Henley if you're there? A little bit? He might be busy grinding away, so we'll let him.
No, it all played out how it was supposed to.
Brackett got his guy. That's all that matters. And he achieved his goal that year of making sure he didn't lose his attributes from the Nike program. So, all right, Lamar Henley inducted into the XCFL Hall of Fame class of men 26. Let's go ahead and jump to our next guy. It is going to be, I don't know if anyone knows this guy, but Brandon Slater, defensive tackle, played with Guac for a little bit, and then he went over and played with Quacks. Out of all the D tackles, he put up some serious numbers. He was the part of the first draft class, 153 tackles for a loss, 62 and a half sacks. So if you add those together, 216 plays behind the line of scrimmage, 6 fumbles. So per season, he was averaging 30.8 sacks, tackles for loss combined, which was by far the most for all defensive tackles this cycle. I don't want to say it was a down cycle for D tackles, but Slater definitely, stood above the rest as the top Madden Gen defensive tackle. Did you guys know who this guy was? Anyone?
No, I had no idea. And I feel bad. Guac. Well, if it's Guac D tackle, it's pretty good that he's going to be making some noise.
And then, I know you did, Guac. But Slater, I was kind of going through and I didn't even think about him. And then I kind of pulled out, I go through all the stats at the end of the cycle and I pull up the stats and I was like, oh shit, this guy probably should be in the Hall of Fame. And sure enough, here he is, Brandon Slater, finding himself a spot in the XCFL Hall of Fame. Brutal picture.
I'll be honest, I didn't really know much about him. He was on my team.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize until I looked at the end and I was like, oh, wow, he had a lot of sacks.
Yeah, especially when you compared him to the rest. I think he was, 10, 12 higher than the next couple that played the same amount of years as him. It was a great cycle for Slater. A quiet but great cycle, which, it is what it is. So, did you trade for him? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I traded a pretty hefty package for him. Maybe a first and late second or something like that.
Okay.
Walk did most of the development. I just took him on and let him do his thing.
Reap the benefit. And, it's funny. He goes from one guy who does a lot of user D tackle to you who did none. And he still, it didn't really slow him down. And here he is. So Brandon Slater.
Yeah, I mean, he beat out my boy Jamal for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I touched him.
No. That's what those big tackles for loss, man. There's some big tackle for loss games for that guy in there. So it was big to stop the run game. And in a game where pursuit angles were brutal, if your D tackle could just break through and make the play before the pursuit angles even mattered, that was a huge advantage. So Slater etches his name in XCFL history here, jumping in. All right, let's go to our next guy. You could have waited and put my other guy towards the end to make it look like there weren't 3 Giants in the top couple. But this is no surprise. Probably one of my favorite Madden Gen players of all time, Maurice Ricard, middle linebacker from that same draft class. The big number for him, he had 33 forced fumbles, which was like 20 higher than the next closest. He also racked up 25 or 26 picks. He kind of led the way with Madden Gen, outside of maybe one player in. I know he had the most tackles for loss for linebacker. Just a monster cycle. He averaged 8.7 passes defended, and then he averaged 5 forced fumbles this season, which in this game, if you could create turnovers that way, it was a game changer, which is a lot of times why my defense kind of looks so good, because we were just forcing fumbles, and this dude was a big part of it. He had the speed, had a nice ability that we really got going towards the end of the cycle. Didn't get to use it much early on. But Van, you're a big linebacker guy. What's your take on Ricard?
Yeah, man, Maurice Dick. He's. When you had him with Levy, I was like, oh no. And every time that we played, I know we only played 2 or 3 times, Ricard made a play on me every single time. Whether it was a forced fumble, whether it's an INT. And this was one of the first Maddens where I felt that middle linebacker was probably one of the more important positions.
Yeah.
So to have a guy like that at one of the most important positions was insane. He was all over the place. Every time you looked, number 5 was looking for work, as they say.
Yeah, and before we throw it to Rob, I want to clarify, because I always bash Rob's linebackers, that he puts it, ends up getting to the Hall of Fame. He commented right away, oh, Nick's going to linebacker this year, or this time, Ricard did it all, Rob. Pass coverage, tackles for loss, he did it all. Some of your guys are just tackle machines. But, Rob, what's your take on the stud middle linebacker for the Giants?
Guys, Nick's growing up on us. I'm so proud to see, to see linebacker matter in somebody else's eyes. And actually, this was the cycle that they really did make a difference. I know in the past, one could debate whether they made a difference or not. They clearly made an impact. You can look at Quax's team. You can look at Nick's team. They clearly made an impact on the scoreboard and everywhere else. So that was a great pick. I mean, a lot of people were like, what, thinking I was in on those linebackers. I never really was. Although I knew they were going to be good. I wasn't in on them, but man, Nick, that was one heck of a pick and one heck of a cycle for him.
He wasn't supposed to even be the
Volkanovski. Lopez still on the short.
He wasn't even supposed to be, like, I kind of found him on accident when I was scrolling through his draft class, and he was like elite at everything, and I was like, whoa, I think I got to take this guy. And it was, the first draft where we don't really know what matters, don't really know, and I grabbed him, and he right away forced like 8 fumbles his rookie season, and I was like, oh, well, we might have a good one here. So definitely made a big difference for my defense, because even in those games where you can't stop somebody, just a quick hit stick or whatever it was, change the momentum of the game and get you the ball back, save me a couple times against Drew, sack fumbles, whatever it might be. So Ricard, definite monster. Very happy I ended up grabbing him. But a loaded, you said it, Rob. This, I mean, any other Madden, we would have I think I have a spreadsheet here with 20 Madden Gen linebackers on that I had to compare stats for, and the 20 of these guys would have made it any other cycle, I feel like. But then this cycle, you're just going up against, the big 3 and then a couple other ones that were really good, and it just makes it very tough to get in. You really got to set yourself apart. So Ricard jumps in, finds his spot in the XCFL Hall of Fame. Did you edit the live sheet, Quacks?
Yes,
okay,
it should
cool.
work.
Okay.
If it doesn't, I'll stop you.
Okay, cool. No big deal. All right, let's move on to our next guy. We're done with the Giants, everyone. We're good here. I know Grizz is always would have comment like, oh, this is Nick's award show, whatever, but not this time. We're done now. All right, we go from one stud linebacker to another, and this is going to be Jamal Branch of the Cleveland Browns. Wore like 6 different numbers in his time in the XCFL, but settled on 6. Monster cycle for Branch, 41 interceptions, which I believe was more than any player in the league in our 8 seasons.
Yes, sir.
safety, which is incredible because he only played 6 seasons. So he was the second draft class. What he was able to do, you using him, I mean, not even just intercepting the ball, but pick sixes. Dude would score more touchdowns than some players, some teams' best receivers. I think he finished with 9 touchdowns on the year. He had 14 forced fumbles, 108 tackles for loss, so that number's way up there. But averaged 6.8 interceptions, so almost 7 picks a year. I think the closest to him was Bobby Payton of Carolina, who had 5 picks a year, but 2 extra picks a season is huge. Crazy speed, and then you pair him with Quax's user. It was a hell of a cycle for Jamal Branch. Quax, you want to talk a little bit about Branch?
Yeah, I mean, that was the draft class. I had like 3 top 10 picks, and I was bouncing around how I was going to do it. I almost didn't take him because I wanted the safety that ended up getting traded to you. But really, what sold it is he was a Duck alum in game.
That's true.
And I was like, oh, I got some sauce here. And then I think right after I drafted him, we kind of all figured out how much linebackers, how well they played this Madden, like you were saying. And then it was, he became pretty much the only guy on my team that I, was a non-starter in any type of trade talks or anything like that. I wouldn't have moved him for 15 firsts.
Well, it's funny because you compare him to Ricard, and they both wrecked havoc. One did it forcing fumbles, had a couple, decent amount of picks, and the other one, ton of picks, forcing decent amount of fumbles. But I think the biggest thing for these linebackers with the speed, they would just run down stretch plays or, swing routes, or like you didn't even have to use them the whole time. And they would, they were always in the right spot. I don't know if it was play rec or awareness, whatever. It definitely wasn't awareness. Play rec, whatever it might have been. But these guys, these two of the best linebackers in XCFL history, just absolute monsters for different reasons.
I think too, like the linebacker abilities were probably the best in the game, like the most disruptive. It was just sort of a perfect storm. Like, not only were they like the fastest defenders on the field relatively, but they also had all the disrupting stuff where you could just let them do their thing. Yeah. And they're, like you said, making plays on everything.
Because I think Branch was probably faster than most safeties. I think, what was he, 91, 92
Oh, yeah,
speed?
he was 91 or 92. Yeah.
And then I think his Excel was crazy high too. So Jamal Branch finding himself in the XCFL Hall of Fame. So that's 2 Browns for those keeping track at home. 1.5 Browns. All right, let's jump to our next guy. All right, our user might be gone, but the player is still here, and he had such a good cycle, we had to keep him in. We don't like to usually reward the people who leave with Hall of Famers, but this was a guy who, he didn't have crazy speed, he didn't really have anything special attribute-wise, but Josh Downing, the safety for the New York Jets, Brian, I don't even know if Brian drafted him. I think he was an auto draft, and he turned into an absolute monster. In just 5 seasons, 21 picks, 30 passes defended, 9 forced fumbles. He also played a little sub linebacker. He ended up racking up 37 tackles for a loss, also recorded 4 sacks. This was a game changer for the Jets defense who, those of you who know, Brian didn't really manage his roster all that well and signed players and, occasionally signed a few free agents. Most of the time he was just like, hey, can you sign on for me and sign a few players? And I would. But Josh Downing was a monster for him. And I think, when you think of his run through the playoffs and championship or his Super Bowl chance against Brackett that he ended up losing, Downing was still a stud all over the field, had a pick in that game. One of those guys, anytime you saw any of the defensive players that were drafted in the fantasy drafts that we had, like some of those guys put up, like Branch too. The season before we did fantasy draft, the first fantasy draft, Branch's season was so bad. Or Rob, you might have had him on your team, where he put up offensive player like numbers. So that's kind of what Downing was doing too. Just pick sixes, the whole bunch here. So Josh Downing gets in as one of our safeties in a very, I guess the safety cycle is okay. The corner cycle is absolutely horrible, but Josh Downing kind of put himself above everybody else when coming to Madden Gen safeties. Average, double everyone else's interception totals and passes defended. So let's jump ahead to our next guy. It's going to be the third linebacker from the same draft class, Braden Watford from the Denver Broncos, Super Bowl champ, won one early in the cycle, also made it back and lost one. Watford had a massive cycle tackle wise, 915 total tackles. He was averaging 131 tackles a year, a little inflated from the last season where he got a lot of CPU forced losses and things like that, where he put up big numbers. But he was also a passes defended monster, where he, almost 9 passes defended a season. He also forced 10 fumbles, and he was one of 2 elite linebackers that the Broncos had. Trent Day was also up in consideration for making it, but Watford's tackle numbers and sacks and tackles for loss just kind of pushed him over the top here. So Braden Watford, 3 linebackers from that first draft class, all getting in here. I think the biggest key, and I think you guys, and it's kind of been a thing, but like if you get a player early and they consistently perform well, it's very tough for guys who only play 4 or 5 seasons to get themselves in the Hall of Fame over these guys who did it for longer. And that's what you have here with a lot of these guys we've seen, a lot of 7-year players. So Braden Watford makes his mark in the XCFL Hall of Fame. So we got 2 more, Quacks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we should have 2 more here. Just hit it through, and if it goes to the top 25, just hit a reload.
All right, there we go. The first tight end making
we're good.
Yep, we are good. It's working. We talked about his quarterback earlier, but Ben Colon, whatever you want to call him. I'm going with Colon. 5 seasons, dude scored 116 touchdowns. So at the tight end position, averaged 84 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 23 touchdowns a season. What he did at the tight end spot, compared to everyone else, was the easiest pick of them all for me. Out of all the positions, other than Worthy, out of all the other positions, though, like you look for that separation, and for tight end, like there were some good tight ends. Denver's tight end had a chance. Brackett's tight end, Sal Anthony, had a chance. But you look at what Cologne, you saw Cologne stats, and then you saw everyone else's, and it was like, well, this should probably be the only guy. So we only have 1 tight end going in, and it's going to be Cologne. Rob, you're a tight end guy. How you feeling about Ben Cologne? He was in your division.
Yeah, I hated him.
Yeah.
That guy, he was, I tell you, that particular draft, there was the debate over which tight end was the best. There was him and the one that Higgy ended up drafting. And I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But
Miguel Chavez. There
were several conversations around the water cooler on who he should take. Should he take the Chavez? Should he take Cologne? And we looked at it, and I thought he made the right choice. Had no idea that meant that Cologne would end up falling into my division, and I'd be facing him, or I would have talked him in the other way. But no, hats off to Chaos. He really, that tight end was a problem, and I mean, it didn't matter how you defended him, and it was hard enough to defend. But I mean, he just seemed like he was open even when he was not open.
Dude,
very clutch.
Towards the end of the one season, it might have been his first season. Chaos had him in a gadget role, and he took that one handoff and went 70 yards for a touchdown. But Quack, so your take on Cologne, you played him in a couple big games in the playoffs and throughout the cycle.
Yeah, and I'll say it's kind of surprising that we didn't have a bigger tight end turnout here, because it felt like it was a pretty strong cycle for tight ends. We had kind of like a stud every season, it felt like. But like you said, I mean, it was a no-brainer when you looked at the stats.
We saw so many tight ends go in the first round of every draft. It was. And
I feel like we got a lot of guys who really like tight ends.
Yeah, it's just and Chaos,
like big part of the offense.
Yeah, especially because especially with how pass coverage worked and linebackers not being able to keep up with the fast ones like this. Like it was somebody you had to user cover every single time. Like you had to know where Cologne was at all times. And if you didn't, he was probably catching a passing run for a touchdown. So, but Ben Cologne making his mark on the XCFL, and he's hopping in the Hall of Fame. So, congrats, Chaos, second Titan going in. And let's go to our final inductee of the night. And it is going to be Keon Brown of the Carolina Panthers and the Miami Dolphins. Spent majority of his career with Brapp over in Carolina. Brapp ended up breaking the whole thing down in Carolina and sent him to Miami. And he kept going. Exactly what he was doing in Carolina, he started doing in Miami. And as far as edge rushers go, it was a good cycle of edge rushers. I just don't like it. There were only a few that kind of had Hall of Fame, considerable numbers. But in 5 seasons, 143 tackles for a loss, 52 sacks. He forced 5 fumbles. He also had some interceptions. He had a couple touchdowns. Over the course of his career, he averaged 39 tackles for loss and sacks a season. So a double-digit sack guy, almost 30 tackles for loss a year, which is incredible. So yeah, that's our only edge rusher getting in, and I feel like that's usually we see more, but that's there were a couple big names out there. We'll kind of break down who just missed it as we kind of get through the rest of the show, but that's going to be our 14 XCFL Hall of Famers. Keon Brown, congratulations VBD, congratulations Brapp, but he is making it to the Hall of Fame. All right, let's go. We'll shift gears here and we'll go with our XCFL top 25 players of the cycle. Top 25 now, just to clarify for those who are new or if you're not part of the league. Madden Gen Hall of Fame can only be obviously the players drafted, and then the top 25 can be everybody. So this will contain a lot of real players as well. We might see a couple recurring names. We'll just skip through those guys because it doesn't matter too much. All right, you guys ready? We good to do this? We're making pretty good time here. This is good. Normally these drag on. So, Van, how cool is the walkout from the Oval Office, though?
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Pretty sick. If you're watching the UFC fights,
I've never wanted to be American more in my life.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Shout out to Quacks. This is a cool way to do these top 25 players cycle. We're going to have them pop up one at a time. Unless things malfunction, then it's my fault. And well, let's go. We'll start at 25, work our way all the way to 1. Let's go ahead. Let me get to my sheet with the graphics here. So how we did this, just that all 5 staff members submitted, we had like a list of 35 players that we thought should be in consideration for top 25. We each made a list. We then took the list and popped it into AI and had them kind of combine all 5 lists and spit out what we thought was like a more accurate list. And then obviously we adjusted for corrections and if someone forgot somebody or something like that. So it was pretty cool how it worked out. So shout out Claude because they were able to bring this together for us. But I think it was a cool way to do it. It gave everybody a say, and someone might have somebody at 3, but then somebody else had them at 18. And so it kind of, it's a very interesting. Normally, I get everyone's opinion, and then I create the list how I feel what their input should be. So this is not my list like it normally is, because mine looks very different than this, to be honest. But let's go ahead and get into it. So number 25, top player of the cycle, is going to be Patriots, Titans, Cardinals, Vikings quarterback Drake May. Super Bowl champ, finally found a forever home in Minnesota with Brackett. Over the course of his 8 seasons, 328 touchdowns, 106 interceptions, 69% completion percentage. Also ran for 30 touchdowns. I think once Brackett got rid of Davis, no one really knew what he was going to do. And he quickly grabbed his New England boy, and I think it kind of worked out well for him. He was able to get him on a little bit of a discount compared to what he would have had to pay another quarterback. But Drake May, it was so hard to leave him off. He was, one of those guys that was on the border, and it was just, the Super Bowl can kind of bring you over the top here. If you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback with good stats, and then you also have to look at his cycle stats. Obviously when he's playing in Carolina or in New England, he wasn't throwing up crazy numbers. When Sparty had him, it was a lot of sim games. When he got to Minnesota, the stats went crazy. So if you only took into effect those, the averages would be a lot higher. So Drake May jumping into the Hall of Fame. Quacks, what you got on old Drake May here?
Yeah, I think he's the hometown boy that Brackett finally got his hands on, but I didn't really realize until. Sorry, I got.
Oh, you're good. We
you go to something else.
Yeah. We could shift focus, but I didn't. I think I didn't realize how many teams he played for. I forgot Chaos had him at one point. I don't know how long Willie actually used him for. Kind of bounced around a little bit, but found his home, and there we go. So let's jump to number 24. And it is going to be Kevin Winston, safety for the Miami Dolphins and Carolina Panthers. When we looked at all of the stats for safeties, Winston shocked me with his cycle averages. Was pretty high up there in picks with 25 picks, which is pretty high for a safety. 67 passes defended, which is number 1 for all safeties that we had considered. And then ended up forcing 3 fumbles, recovered 7. So we averaged over 100 tackles a season, averaged 8 passes defended, and then averaged 3 picks a year, which, as you'll start to see, there weren't a lot of interceptions this cycle. It was a very low interception crowd. Not many corners, not many safeties etching their names up here, so it's a big deal for someone to make it. So VBD and then Brapp team up for another one here, and Kevin Winston is finding himself in the XCFL Hall of Fame. Van, how important are safeties to you, Van? Especially this cycle, I guess.
Well, corners were absolutely useless. They were like
Yeah.
they were like pits on a bull.
Yeah.
The safeties I found, it helped in the run game as well. Played like second linebackers, but the corners were absolutely pathetic.
I think the trend we'll see, though, a lot of real safeties. People kept their real safeties this cycle because they had the speed. That the Madden safeties would just have no speed. The fastest we were seeing was like 92, and that was so rare.
And that was the one Quack did to you, wasn't it?
No, Quack's the one for me was a little slow, but he was a big hitter and stuff like that. But Winston had the ability to play in the box and play deep. So that's when you get that, you see the stat sheet stuffers. So Kevin Winston finding his way into the top 25, coming at number 24. Let's jump to our next guy here. And it's going to be the same combo here, but it's going to be Keon Brown. We already talked about him. Another VBD Brapp collab here. So Keon Brown finds himself at number 23 for the cycle. We already talked about him, so we'll kind of just jump through. But and then the same thing with 22. Josh Downing, really good cycle. Like I said, less seasons, but was able to kind of stuff the stat sheet in his 5 seasons played. So Downing finds himself in at 22. Here we have a first corner coming in. It's Deonte Banks for my New York Giants. Banks led the way for all corners with 32 picks, which was a crazy number. He was the only person throughout the whole cycle, or only corner throughout the whole cycle, to average at least 4 interceptions a season. Averaged 4 picks and 8 passes defended. He was a game changer for me because everyone commenting all cycle how corners weren't doing anything, and I was looking at Banks. He had a season with 10 picks, and I was like, I'm not seeing that. But then when I started putting other guys in, I was like, okay, I see it. So the play ball helped on Deonte Banks. Fast guy, played all 8 seasons. Really good cycle for Deonte Banks. He was just one of those guys, if you tried to test him deep, he was fast enough to be there. So Banks finds his way into the top 25, coming at 21. Rob, you kind of got shafted, Rob. You drafted 2 stud corners in the same draft. Both shot to 99 overall so fast. And in any other cycle, it would have been the perfect recipe. They were both tall. They were both fast. And the whole no-play ball thing, I feel like, really hurt you once we all kind of realized what was going on. Would you agree?
Yeah, it was kind of depressing. I mean, I had a great cycle with Bartell. JT Bartell was a lot of fun.
He was in consideration.
His numbers wasn't up to speed with what they should have been, but they were better than most, which all that does is just prove your point on how down it was. But Shields, I don't know if he ever recorded a pick for the Lions after I traded him, but he was the best player I ever seen be the biggest turd I ever seen.
For reference here, JT Bartell was in consideration, played 6 seasons, and only in those 6 seasons he only grabbed 18 picks, which was very high for corners, but not high enough to be a game changer and get him into the Hall of Fame. So 18 is so low compared to most cycles. We always see 30, 40 picks. Not this time. So it was very tough for corners to jump in here. So let's jump to our next guy coming at number 20. Another Giant. This is going to be Brian Burns. Edge rusher. Burns was a monster. Guys, I tried really hard to keep my guys out, and it did not work. I had a couple. I think I only had 5 good players, and all of them had made some serious noise. For reference, Burns 60 and a half sacks was good for 3rd most throughout the whole cycle. He was 2nd in all edge rushers with 24 forced fumbles, and then he recorded the most tackles for a loss with 168 tackles for a loss. So he averaged 24 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles a season. So Brian Burns finds his spot in the XCFL Hall of Fame, or XCFL Top 25. Let's go. And we got Brandon Slater. We already chatted about him a little bit. This list gets a little redundant because obviously if you're a Hall of Famer, you're more than likely in this top 25 list. So we'll jump through Slater. Shout out Glock and Quacks again there. Here's a new guy. Speaking of forced fumbles, if you needed one, this was your guy. Jalen Walker for the Atlanta Falcons and JMO. Actually, I apologize, JMO. He had the most tackles for a loss throughout the cycle for DNs by 169. And he edged Burns out with 61 and a half sacks and had 28 forced fumbles, which is obviously why he sits ahead of Burns on this list. Crazy speed. Van, we can go to you on this one. I know it's a guy you played against.
Well, I mean, toss all your play action rollouts out the
Yeah,
playbook.
oh yeah.
Forget it. Like, and sometimes I'd forget and I'd try to pull one off, and he would force fumble every time, and I'd go, "What am I doing?"
Even if you didn't have QB contain on, he was still there. He had to, and I think when JMO traded away, who was it, James Pierce or whoever it was?
They traded Jake Pierce to John Bow.
Yeah, and then this guy just kind of was on the opposite side and became the primary rusher and made some serious noise this cycle. So, what's up, Ryan? How you doing, brother? From
His defense, it was crazy.
Yeah, when you look roster top to bottom, JMO built some studs. He had a D tackle, he had the left tackle, a little bit of everything over there in Atlanta. So Jalen Walker finds his spot here. And 18 is so good, but it just shows what we're about to see coming up here because his stats were tough to beat. Let me see where I had him. My list is the real one. I had him at 17. Never mind. JMO, I had your back there. I had him higher. All right, let's go ahead to our 17th guy, and it's going to be Kyle Pitts of the Miami Dolphins. And I don't know if he ever recorded a snap for the Falcons. He may have before he was traded. JMO, you can correct me on that one. But it was funny because I was looking at Pitts' stats, and I was so impressed with what Pitts did. And then I looked at the averages, and Cologne pretty much doubled them up on everything, which was even more a shout out to Cologne. But Pitts held his own, played all 8 seasons, 10,000 yards. So he had over 1,200 yards every season, 13 and a half touchdowns a year. I mean, this is VBD's signature here, dude. He did not play with the Falcons at all. So there you go. You get the Dolphins logo behind him. But Kyle Pitts, VBD always has a stud tight end out there and Pitts, he likes the fast ones, and Pitts was a nightmare for defenders. Who has anyone want to comment on Kyle Pitts?
I only played VPD one time, I believe.
It was similar to Cologne, though. Like, I think the biggest thing for tight ends is it's either you either get the tight end drag or quick in route, or it's a corner route. And if you guess wrong, and you're in man coverage and it's a fast tight end, it's a touchdown either way. If you guess corner and it's an inside route, if you guess inside route and it's a corner, you're giving up a 75-yard touchdown, especially if they have some speed. So that was kind of a lot we saw with VBD. Whether you could call the play or not, Pitts was still pretty much open because he was faster than most of the safeties. So yeah, corner routes, that's the staple in the VBD offense, the old tight end corner route. All right, let's move to 16. Another edge. So Brapp getting another guy here. Nick Scoten. He not as many forced fumbles as the other guys that we already kind of covered, but he had 165 tackles for a loss, so he led the most tackles for a loss, and then he head over heels the most sacks from the edge position. He had 79 sacks. So the next closest was 12 behind him, I think, James Pierce. But it was quite the cycle for Nick Scroton here. Just speed, I think that was, Brapp always had a good D-line, but then when you put him and Keon Brown together on the same line, it got pretty nasty out there. So Pretty solid duo there for Carolina. So we're seeing a lot of EBD and Brap combos out here. So let's move on. Let's get to our top 15 here. Jahad Campbell, middle linebacker of the Philadelphia Eagles. The first couple seasons, especially season 1, where there were no Madden Gen linebackers, Campbell was a freak. I played him twice a year, obviously. It was a guy you had to pretty much find at the start of the play, and if you had a run play headed his way, you flipped it. Even if it didn't look as good that way, you were like, at least it'll take him a couple seconds to get over to the other side of the field. And that's kind of where Campbell, he did it in the run game. He had crazy tackle numbers. Pick-wise, I think he had, he beat out your boy here. 43 interceptions for Jahad Campbell. So he actually was the interception king of the cycle. Beat out Branch by 2. But he also posted, 15 forced fumbles. He put up 13 and a half sacks. Obviously, he did play 2 more seasons than Branch, so, say what you want. But Jahad Campbell was an absolute nightmare to play against, especially those early seasons before Drew started building up other guys. Campbell just stuck out like a sore thumb as the head over heels best player on that defense. So shout out Drew. Jahad Campbell coming in at number 15. Safety number 14 here is Javon Holland, the Oregon Duck for the New York Giants. The most interceptions for a safety throughout the course of the cycle. Javon Holland had 35. The next closest was 27, I believe. Led the Giants secondary, obviously, with him and Banks out there. Forced 9 fumbles, scooped up 10, had 9 touchdowns on the year, so he was tied with Branch for the most touchdowns, I believe, for a defender. And then he also recorded 95 and a half tackles this season. So Javon Holland finds himself making it in the 14 spot. What do you got, man?
He was on your roster originally, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was one that I think it was the whole when you got to add the traits. And I think that's why we see so many secondary players that were already there, just because you got to add the traits. You could add play ball to those guys. And if you didn't those seasons, then you were really hurting, in the future. So, oh, yeah, Pitts is not an edge. Pitts is a tight end. You're right. Good call. He should have been an edge. He'd be nasty.
Who knows with this? Well, you can put him anywhere.
Yeah. But, Javon Holland, it was one of those guys that I was trying to keep some of my guys off the list, but it was, too hard and, that kind of thing. So Javon Holland finds himself in at the 14 spot. Let's jump to 13. Lamar Henley, we already covered him. Crazy cycle for only 4 seasons in the league. I think he's the highest rated for only playing less than, 6 seasons or, so Henley, obviously stud. Number 12, started with Higgy, didn't really do much, moved his way over to Brian and the Jets, and his cycle went bonkers. I believe he led the way with rushing yards for the cycle, 13,600 rushing yards. So
yeah, I was expecting a little higher than 12 for him.
Yeah, I wonder where I had him. I put him at 10, but a couple other. I think he also one of the 5 left him off the list, so that hurt his rating a little bit. But we accounted for that and moved him up a couple spots. But I think the one thing that he didn't do well that other running backs did this cycle, which is why you might see some higher than him, he didn't really catch the ball in the backfield much. He did have 22 receiving touchdowns, but some of these other guys' numbers were crazy receiving. But he was the workhorse for the Jets. I think he had the most carries, almost 2,000 carries. So he averaged 241 carries a season, 278 touches. But also, averaged over 2,000 yards a season, rushing and receiving, and 21 and a half touchdowns. So, nice live update from Quacks there. Genty, Van, I think you're right though. I think you could have made a case for Genty being higher because he was the Jets' offense. It all flew through him.
Like in fantasy football, aside of the couple, I was after him every time.
Yeah. Well, you knew Brian. I mean, he's a real life football coach. He knew his guy. He knew his talented guys. He had no receivers, and Genty was getting the ball. And that was another one, kind of like Quack said. I think or you might have said it about Worthy. Somebody who's getting the ball, and it did not matter. He'd bump off 4 players, hurdle somebody, and then he was gone for 75 yards and a touchdown. So, I think Rob Higgy traded him for Sauce Gardner, I believe, and Brees Hall maybe.
he made that trade early.
Yeah.
He did get Sauce back. He did get Brees Hall back. And it really didn't do what he had hoped or thought.
Oh, he got hit by the corner bug because I don't think Sauce recorded a pick on his team in the 4 years he played there. So that was one of the everyone yelled at Brian. Brackett said it was the worst trade ever when Brian traded Sauce and Brees Hall for Genty, because I think Brees Hall is faster, but Genty was a monster. He was a pain in the butt to play against. I'm sure all the AFC guys know better than I do, but one of those guys, you had to stack the box. You'd run out of 3-4 and 4-3 plays, and you were just like, shit, dude, now what? Now you're in nickel and dime against him, and those corners were not stopping him. So Genty comes in at 12 overall. Let's jump to our next guy coming in before we get to the top 10. Ben Cologne, we already talked about him. I had this guy on my list at number 6, but obviously it's a mix of all the lists. I think we saw him as high as 5 on somebody else's list, but yeah, Cologne settles in at the 11th spot. So we already talked about him. That was Chaos's his stud tight end over there. So let's jump to our top 20 or top 10 here. Some of this might be a little redundant just because we already have heard some of these names, but let's see if we see anybody else up here. Number 10, New York Giant and Baltimore Raven, Trenton Simpson. Played edge, played linebacker. This was the $40 million man that I paid in free agency by accident. And
I thought that was going to haunt you, and it just turned out to be.
He led the way with 200. He was, I think, the only player over 2. No, that's not true. But from the half edge spot, he recorded 203 tackles for a loss. He had the most forced fumbles on the cycle with 37 forced fumbles. He recovered 15 of them. He scored 8 touchdowns. He also swatted 25 passes. He had 7 picks, 50 sacks. This dude was a freak, especially the last couple. He won Defensive Player of the Year, I think, or the best linebacker the last year over Ricard. Was an absolute monster. It was what I thought was going to be the worst signing of the cycle because his zone coverage was low and everything, and he ended up being an absolute freak that shout out JMO, subscribing with Prime. Just a monster cycle from Trenton Simpson, an absolute game changer for my defense. I got to put him opposite of Brian Burns, and it didn't matter where you went, you were fumbling from one of those guys. 37 and 35 forced fumbles between the two of them or something. So that's a whole lot of fumbles coming from the edge position. But yeah, I mean, that was I got more comments when people played against him than when they played Ricard. So that was
What did you do for your sub linebackers? Who did you have in when Levy played?
I went Ricard at linebacker, Levy at linebacker, kept them both in at sub, and then I put Caesar Barron, the safety I got from Quacks, at nickel. So he played corner for me because he had the big hitter and all that stuff. So it gave me another one, except against certain teams like bracket, you can't have a slow slot corner. A couple teams you couldn't have a slow slot corner, so I'd make adjustments. But yeah, for the most part, it was he played edge unless we were in. And then 3-4, he was an edge rusher too, so he's an outside linebacker, but was mostly blitzing every time. So an absolute weapon. That's all I can say. He's a big part of why I'm taking the Ravens this cycle. So get ready, everybody.
So you know how you know what team Nick's not taking?
Because I mentioned him.
Yeah. So just letting the new guys know.
Cross him off your list.
Number 9, Damon Malone. We already talked about him earlier, but he comes at the 9th spot. Great cycle from Malone. One of the best receivers we saw throughout the cycle. Number 8, I had this guy way higher, I think. I had this guy at 5. Some people had him as high as 3. Nick Emawari for the Seattle Seahawks. This dude, I don't know if you guys played against him, but forced fumbles, tackles for loss, played sub linebacker. He averaged 121 tackles from the safety position, 16 and a half tackles for a loss, 3 picks, 8 passes defended, and then, am I on the wrong line? Oh, yep. And 3 forced fumbles. So he finished with 22 forced fumbles and 14 fumbles recovered with 7 touchdowns. So he forced a fumble, he'd scoop it up and then go score. He was a legit problem, especially I think when Glock got rolling, he was a huge part of it, and that dude's a weapon. So if you're considering Seattle for Madden 27, don't trade this guy. Keep this guy locked up, and let him be the heart and soul of your defense like Guac did, because no other safety was really close in tackles with 121. So
I tried trading for him. I tried trading for him twice.
there's no way. There was no way. It's similar to what
Oh.
Quack said, where you Branch is off limits. You would have to give Guac 6 first-round picks for Amari. So, and that's a real-life guy coming into 8 spot. Number 7, Calvin Andrews. We already talked about him a little bit, but he's going to find himself at the 7 spot. Some people had him as high as 3. I had him down, I think, I had him at 11, so everyone else kind of pulled him up there for me. So shout out to the other staff members. Number 6, Maurice Ricard. I had him a little higher, but other people brought him down. Great cycle for Ricard. We kind of already talked about him, so we'll move on. Let's get to our top 5 here. Number 5, I think when the team draft happened and we saw Pride ended up with the Lions, you already probably could have permanent markered this guy in the top 5. Jahmyr Gibbs in Pride's offense, even if he gets pass happy with nowadays, whatever it is, Jahmyr Gibbs was an absolute monster. Almost 12,000 yards, broke the career record for most rushing touchdowns in a career with 152. He also added 63 receiving touchdowns, so 4,600 receiving yards. So he averaged 2,000 yards, 27 touchdowns a year if you count everything all together. Had a couple seasons with some 70-30 or 75-25 trouble. But Quacks, I think, this cycle, those speed halfbacks that got the little speed boost every once in a while, just an absolute problem for defenses. Is Quacks with us? Maybe not. We'll come back to him.
It'll be interesting to see where the Lions go in the draft.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing for these running backs too was like the lack of pursuit angles, and then they also had the ability to break tackles. And when you break a tackle, and there's no one pursuing you, these plays that should have been like 5-yard runs or 3-yard runs turned into 80-yard touchdown runs. And especially when you got Gibbs with 96 speed or whatever it was, that was just a recipe for disaster for defenses. So let's jump here. I think we've seen some of these names, but Gibbs comes in as I believe he was the top non-Madden Gen player of the cycle. So congrats to Pride. You're good, Quacks. All right, Jamal Branch comes in at 4 here with his 6-season cycle that he put together. Just an absolute game changer. We already talked about him, so we won't spend too much time. Number 3, Ronnie Jacobs. Absolute monster cycle, like we said. Riot and Drew combined for that. Mostly Drew, but Riot had 1 season with him. So he comes in at 3. Elijah Weston, the Titans quarterback, ends up in the 2 spot because of his great cycle and crazy touchdown numbers. I think one season, like by week 12, he was like on pace for like 84 passing touchdowns, and I had to message Chaos and be like, "Yo, dude, bring it down a notch here. You need to get some rushing touchdowns." So, but that's just the offense he was in the game we were playing. So, and then number 1 player of the cycle, none other than Marquise Worthy coming in as the man of the cycle, which I don't know if it shocks anybody, but he was a almost unanimous number 1. John Baugh put him as the 3rd best player of the cycle. We'll just air John's dirty laundry out right there, which was very rude, and I might have to remove John from staff for that. But everyone else had him at number 1. So yeah, shout out to these top 25. Heck of a cycle for those guys. Let me get our next little situation here, and we only got 2 more things, then we'll go ahead and move on, fellas. So let's we'll release our also proud for throwing in that new Titans logo. Yeah, shout out Quacks. That was all Quacks. He did all the graphics. So let's see if anybody made our XCFL User Hall of Fame. Bum, bum. All right. We actually have 2 members getting inducted this time around.
Nice.
Very tough vote. We had 4 guys on the ballot. Drew, Guac, Riot, and VBD. You had a combination of championships, activity. One guy did some staff stuff for us. A bunch of longtime members, thousands of games played between the bunch of them. Very tight vote. I think when you have 4 candidates, it almost hurts everyone just because the votes get so spread out instead of like having a unanimous kind of thing. But both of these guys appeared on, I believe, 45% of the ballots, which I think we've always used like 43 as our cutoff point. So they just made it in with just enough votes. Let me grab the graphic before I do this. All right, first up, I wrote a couple little things here, but all right, yeah, this I think this to me, all this other stuff is whatever. It changes cycle to cycle. The Hall of Fame, the User Hall of Fame, is kind of like the most sacred thing the XCFL has, I think. It's that whole thing, heroes get remembered, legends never die. You kind of etch your name in that XCFL history book. And this time, like I said, we have two guys that we're able to induct tonight who don't just show up and play the games. They've kind of been a big part of the league for a while now, obviously, and that can be said about all four, candidates. XCFL Hall of Fame is more than just about winning football games. We're all here and we all like to do that, and it definitely matters, but it's more about the impact you have on the league, whether it's popping in the chat every day, being a positive member of the community, whether it's, jumping on shows, content, whatever you do. So many different ways to kind of etch your name in the XCFL Hall of Fame. We want guys to get in every cycle. We want it to still be like an exclusive club where you really have to earn it. And it's one of those things that, like, when you get enough votes, it's almost like you gain the respect of your peers, and kind of can get that induction. So first induction here, let's kind of go. I wrote some stuff a little bit down, so let's go ahead and read it. To understand our first inductee, you only have to look at one thing, and that is results. He's quite simply one of the most brilliant virtual football minds that we've seen pick up a controller throughout the league, cycle to cycle. Drew doesn't just play a scheme. He understands the game. An elite player developer, even though he took the Eagles this time. He turns raw ratings into superstars and simply always gets it done. His legacy isn't just, a thought or an idea. It's a long-time workload that kind of speaks for itself. If you think about his resume, it almost is like, especially this cycle, it's kind of like a cheat code. 107 wins and only, I think, 24 losses. But over his time in the XFL, Drew has played in over 790 career games. What a grind, the dedication to just be here that long and not have something come up where you have to step away from the league or anything like that. Things might change when he has the baby, I think, as the baby would do. But out of those 800 games, he's won 557 of them and only lost 233, which is a 70.5 career winning percentage. In a league that's this competitive, that's a pretty dominant, winning percentage. I think it's one of the highest we've seen in the XCFL, so shout out there. And then obviously the crowning achievement for Drew, 5-time Super Bowl champion in a league where guys are trying so hard to win their first. You can pretty much put it down that Drew's going to win one every single cycle, sometimes a couple. Always a chance to make the Super Bowl. So shout out to Drew, one of our longtime vets. Like I said, anytime you approach that 800 game mark, it's pretty incredible. So shout out to Drew. Congrats on earning the XCFL User Hall of Fame. All right. Any thoughts on that? What do you guys think on Drew here?
I don't think that's much of a choice there. I mean, like you said, the results, the guy's just a stud at the game. He's always in there, consistent Super Bowl guy, playoff guy, div winner guy. There's no way he has to be in here. It's good to see him in.
Yeah, Rob, what do you got on old Drew?
Congratulations to Drew. Really good player. So hats off to him. Well deserved.
Yep, like I said, it's not about all the championships, but they sure do help when people are voting. That's for sure. All right, let's get to our next inductee tonight. May not be known or recognized for all the trophies in the trophy case, but he is a giant of a different nature. In a community, there are people with skills, and there are other people who are the soul of the league. And Riot is one of those XCFL souls of the league. The absolute definition of an elite community member. In a world of egos and excuses, Riot has always stood apart as someone who respects the rules, leads with a positive attitude, and lifts the league up just by being a part of it. greatness in the Hall of Fame is not just about winning Super Bowls. It's about conquering obstacles to be here. And let's consider this for Riot. Riot has logged a outrageous 1,056 career games played. That kind of longevity, almost unheard of. I think we only have a couple guys over the thousand game mark. So an absolute Iron Man shows up for the league day in, day out, pops in chat. And now you think about that with he lives and plays from overseas. So for years, I think going on 6-7 years now, knowingly and without complaints, scheduled his games at crazy hours, playing super early in the morning or crazy late at night, just to make things work with the rest of our time zones. While we all think we're being flexible, then you look at poor Riot, who is actually changing his entire life around to play a video game with us. He's currently
never complains. He never complains.
He's currently our only overseas member. We've had a few in the past, but Riot's the one who has kind of able to stick it out. And then, even more remarkable, you throw in the fact that he brought a baby into the world this cycle, which, if any of you know, obviously the sleep cycle, sleep schedule is already screwed because he's playing video games with us. But now you throw in, you got to wake up to help your wife with the baby. Then you're trying to play games. So, a big life event like that, which normally causes most people to have to leave the league. Riot is still here, still kicking. Like I said, may not be winning all the games he wants to. But, absolutely, foundational member of the league. The dedication, it's not just respected by us all, it's revered. All the great leagues out there, need players like Riot to make it make it last, make it survive. So please join me in congratulating Riot as part of our, part of our community as we enshrine him into the Hall of Fame. So awesome. Really, I think the story here, two completely different users, two completely different legacies, but now both get to hear their name etched in XCFL royalty, which is pretty cool. So, one last round of applause for these two guys to kind of earn the respect of all their peers, what they do for the league, in the league. So congratulations to both of you guys. So, pretty cool. What do you guys think on Riot?
Yeah, I couldn't have done it, for half a season. Never mind for what he does every season. And to log that many hours, what is it, 12 hours behind or ahead? Something like that?
Yeah, I think it's like he usually is waking up at midnight our time, which has got to be like 5, 6 a.m. his time.
I think it's Wednesday there right now.
Yeah.
So, the fact that he can get up and do that on a consistent basis, never complains, never no-shows, that's Hall of Fame worthy right there in my eyes. Congratulations, Riot.
Forgot I never put his plaque up on the screen. Sorry about that, Riot. But there you go.
We're not giving him a plaque, are we?
There you go.
Congratulations, Riot.
All right. Well, that is going to kind of close up shop on this. Before we officially cut our stream and close the books on Madden 26, guys, it's kind of like a toast to the cycle. That's what it really is. That's kind of what this award show kind of does for us. To our newest Hall of Famers, Drew and Riot, big congratulations. To everybody who had a top 25 player who dominated on the field this year, congrats. Most importantly, every single one of you guys who kind of make the XCFL and the community, what it is, one of the best ones out there, in my opinion, and non-biased, the best community out there. It's been a fun cycle. I think, we laugh together. We all rage about the game. We compete against each other day in and day out. And I think, we really, truly have built something special here. And I think that, some of us have been together for, 8, 9 real life years, which is incredible. But, now is the time where the new cycle's calling. We kind of get to close the books here on an unforgettable Madden 26. But it's time to kind of, like Rob said at the start of the show, it's time to kickstart that grind all over again, learn a new game, learn a bunch of new, processes, what works, what doesn't. And now that the award show is officially in the books, let's bring on Madden 27, fellas. Thank you, Rob and Van, for being a part of this. And thank all, 31 of you other guys, the staff members, everybody who make this league what it is. So I really appreciate everything everybody does for us. I hope you guys appreciate the effort we put in for you guys, because I think it's definitely something special, and I hope it's still something everybody always wants to be a part of and looks forward to at the start of every Madden. So all right, fellas, thanks for tuning in. Go ahead and watch our UFC. Go ahead and enjoy your Sunday night before the morning grind kicks off for work. I appreciate it. And we are out of here until Madden 27, fellas. We will see you there. See ya.
Later.